Hi, everyone. My name is Elana Spira, and I'm a clinical psychologist here at the Child Study Center in our Westchester branch. So I'm here today to talk to you about how to keep calm and get homework done. You can submit questions at any time today by typing them into the questions pane of the control panel that's on the right side of your screen. We'll answer questions at the end of our presentation. So we're going to start actually with a poll question. How much conflict does homework cause in your home? Just want to get a brief read of what people are experiencing currently in your homes. I'll take about 15 seconds just to get some responses, and we'll see what everyone has to say about that. Okay, so 60% of you said that homework causes a lot of conflict, which is actually not surprising because we know that homework is often a significant stressor for children and can become a battlefield where children and parents are constantly engaged, which is often when they come to us for help. So what I'm going to do today is share some strategies to help set you up for success and hopefully a lot less stress during homework time. And many of these strategies come from a program that we have created here at the Child Study Center, an evidence-based program called Organizational Skills Training for Children with ADHD. And the tools are really, there are many tools in that program, but what I'm going to focus on are tools that will help you get homework time into a good routine and a smooth routine. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to address this through 4 key questions that your child needs to know the answers to in order to be able to get homework done effectively. So we're going to talk about whether your child knows what to do for homework, where to do homework, when to do homework, and how to plan time for homework. So let's start with the question of what to do for homework. So the first question, what to do for homework, okay? And here we're going to talk about planners and calendars. So again, just a brief poll question. How many of your children have looked at you with this face, right, and said, I have no idea what's for homework each night? So if you could just, again, take a second to answer your response here. Does your child know what is due each night? Never, sometimes, or almost always? We'll take a second or two to see what the responses are there. Okay, so it seems like about 60% of you said that sometimes your child knows what's due for homework. That means that a significant percentage of the time, your child might say to you, I have no idea what the homework is tonight. That actually happened in my house last night with my 9-year-old daughter. And so we all know that those moments can be incredibly stressful, and we want to try to help avoid them, right? So how can we help? How can you help your child know what's for homework consistently? So what we want to really make sure your child has is a consistent routine for recording homework, okay? So we're talking about a planner. Now, in today's day and age, most people have some kind of online system for knowing what the homework is, right? Schools have an online portal, and oftentimes parents, or usually kids, will say, but it's enough, my teacher puts the homework up online, right? Unfortunately, there can be a lot of gaps in that kind of a system, right? Some teachers don't record the homework in time for you to know what your child needs to do that night. Sometimes it can be hard to navigate, and it's not as easy for your child to sort of access that system as it is for them to look at their paper planner, right? Now, in the younger grades, usually teachers are sending home a list of homework assignments, but as children get older, they do need to start keeping track of this for themselves. So we really do recommend, especially if your child has difficulty with organizational skills, that you help them develop a routine for writing things down, right? Plain old, traditional paper and pencil, okay? So what are some elements of a good planner? Your child might get a planner from their school which might have some of these elements and might be missing a few, so I'll give you some ideas and some tips for how to maybe make sure that the planner addresses what you needed to address. So a good planner will be broken down by subject, have space for detail, some place to record long-term assignments, things that aren't due tomorrow, and also space to record materials that are needed. So actually a visual hopefully will help clarify this. So this is a homemade planner that we actually use in the organizational skills training program with children. and it's called, we call it our daily assignment record, and you can see that in the leftmost column you have the subject, right? There's a good amount of space to write what's due, and then there's also this nifty column that says, what do I need to take home with me today, okay? Now that column is probably not in your child's planner, but you can easily put something like that in your child's planner by doing something as simple as printing out little labels that have check boxes for the kinds of materials your child usually needs to have. Put it in there in the planner, and now they can do that kind of a checklist, right? You'll see there's also a place here to record due dates for other assignments and things that are due. Now, that again is probably not in your child's planner, but they can write that there, and then your job when they come home is to make sure that those long-term assignments go somewhere else, okay? Because we want your child to develop an organized, coherent view of what they need to do and when. Okay, so for that purpose, some kind of a monthly calendar view is going to be really helpful for your child. Again, I know kids today love, they love their cell phones, and maybe they have a calendar on their cell phone. That actually is probably not going to do it because of the fact that that cell phone camera is so small. And also that when you put things in, you usually can't see everything, right? Again, the idea here, especially if your child struggles with organization, is to try to make things as visual as possible, okay? So I would suggest if your child's planner has a monthly calendar, then let them use it, right? They might not write the test, math test next Thursday. They might not put it in their calendar at school, but when they come home, you can sit down with them and say, oh, so I heard, today you found out you have a test. Let's put it in your calendar so that we know it's coming up. Okay. Another really good idea is to have somewhere in your home, preferably in your homework area, which we'll talk about in just a second. You should have somewhere some kind of monthly calendar where you can keep track of all the things that are coming up in your child's life. Okay. So you can keep track of important activities and events, the school play that's coming up, the science fair, a trip that they have, and then also activities, what day is soccer, so on and so forth, and put the tests on there and put the projects on there, because then your child will be able to have, like I said, that sort of bird's eye view of what's coming up. And this is going to be really important when we talk about time planning later on to keep in mind, right? Your child needs to have a consistent place to look where they have recorded assignments. Now, if your child struggles with organizational skills to a significant extent, let's say they have ADHD, okay, and you're not entirely sure that what they write down in their planner when they come home is accurate, then here's a place where you might want to loop in your child's teacher, okay? Or if they're in a special ed program, you loop in their aide, right? Or you loop in, if it's middle school, their guidance counselor or their homeroom teacher, okay? And you can enlist support from the school professionals. This can actually also be written into a child's 504 plan or IEP plan to have written in support in making sure that your child is recording assignments appropriately and has materials that they need at the end of the day. Okay, so this may be something that you can help your child set up at home, say like, look, this is how it works and this is why you're going to do things this way, and then it moves smoothly from there on in, or it may be something where you need to enlist some support on the school side. Okay, so now we know, right, now you've got some tips for making sure your child knows what's for homework, which of course is step number one, because if they don't know what the homework is, then they can't do any of these other really, really helpful routines, right? So now we need to figure out, where is your child doing homework, okay? So it's usually the first question that I ask, because I want to get a sense, right? Is it kind of like, well, wherever, okay? My house is so chaotic at 4 p.m., you wouldn't believe it, and the kids just kind of like pull out their backpacks, sometimes they're on the floor, sometimes they're on the couch, right? You do need to consider the location, homework location, okay? You want to think about the family schedule. Who is in which room at what time, okay? You also want to think about distractors in each location. And for different kids, different things can be distracting, right? So actually some kids work better with a low level of background stimulation going on, right? Music playing, or even just knowing that people are around, they're going to be more on track. Some kids really need like a soundproof room, okay, where there's nothing else happening. So think about what works best for your child, okay? You know, some children, as they get older and they've got a long assignment to work on, they might do better working at Starbucks or at the library. So really consider, try it out, right? Talk to your kids about this. Say, let's, you know, kind of be detectives. Let's think about where do you get the best work done, okay? So think about that. And also consider how often does your child need your help during homework time and monitoring, right? So I've had parents say, well, I have this beautiful homework setup in my kid's room. They've got a desk, it's right by the window, and it's like, you know, the latest and greatest furniture, and everything is set up beautifully, except their kid goes up there and then they're lost for like an hour. They start playing Legos, they're staring out the window, whatever it happens to be. That kid probably needs to be at the dining room table where mom can really keep an eye on him or her, right? So think about that as well, and think about your needs, right? Do you need to be making dinner during that time? And does your child need you checking in every 10 minutes? If so, set them up at the kitchen counter, right? That can work too. Now, what do you want to have in your homework location? You want to make sure that your child has access to the materials that they'll need, okay? First of all, help them develop a routine where you tell them, now we're getting ready to go, okay? What do you need? Have them stop and think. It's homework time. What do you need? Well, I need my backpack. I got to make sure I've got a sharpened pencil. Maybe I need a calculator. Maybe I need some scrap paper, okay? Have them consider what they need and lay it out, okay, in front of them. Then have them also think about, what should I put away, okay? So if they are working at the dining room table, you might need to help them with this by clearing a space, okay? And also helping your child consider, what should I put away that might distract me? So phones do not belong in the homework area, okay? Your child might put it face down on the desk and say, okay, no, I'm good to go, I won't look at it. I want that phone nowhere near the desk, okay? Put it in a box, tell them they can get it back when homework is done. Think about things like that. You may also want to think about having some, if your child needs more than just a pencil to do homework, a little rolling cart that has materials they need that you can move, because maybe they can't work in the same exact spot every night. And you also want to make sure that wherever they work, they can see a clock. Okay, this is going to be really important. You'll see later on when we talk about time planning, they have to be able to keep track of the time to know how they're doing and how they're progressing. You may also want to have a timer in the homework location. We'll talk about how you can use that, but tools for keeping them on track with time are really important. And then finally, I want you to think about whether you can post some homework rules in the homework location. Okay, why do we actually need homework rules? This kind of sounds like a classroom, right? Where you sit down, you got the rules all over the place. Well, there's a reason they set up a classroom that way. And that is, kids need visual reminders of the structure and the routine. Okay, so your homework rules are going to clearly explicate what is and is not allowed during homework time. Because you don't want to be the broken record, nagging and constantly kind of hovering and monitoring your child, but you do want to be able to point to the wall and say, look, is this allowed, right? These are the homework rules. And I want you to sit down and make these rules with your child so that they are aware of it. Don't just like put it up on the wall one day and be like, here are the new homework rules, right? But you want to really involve them in this the way that teachers do at the beginning of the year to develop classroom rules. Okay, so here are just some sample homework rules. So for example, put on there where homework has to be done, right? If you've discovered that your kid has to be at the table, that's a rule. It's non-negotiable, okay? We're not going to talk about this. We're not going to negotiate it every night. It's just where you do your homework, right? And if you adopt this kind of no-nonsense, very matter-of-fact attitude, you can try to start chipping away at some of these struggles, these power struggles that are happening every night in your house. So you can also put in the homework rules things like you got to get all your stuff before you sit down, right? You can think with your child, too, about what makes homework time go more smoothly, right? For example, starting with math, right? That could go on the homework rules to try to make it kind of an easy process for the child. They've thought ahead about like what's going to work best, right? You can put rules about breaks on there. So if I wrote here on my sample rule that there are no breaks until you're done, that might work really well for a first grader who has 10 minutes of homework, right? They shouldn't be taking a break in 10 minutes. It might not work so well for a teenager who has to work for 3 hours. And for that kid, you're going to have to think about, well, what's appropriate? How many breaks do they need? How can they space them out? Things like that. So you can also put on the homework rules things like mom or dad have to review everything before you're done, right? Otherwise, it's not done. Or your bag has to be packed before you can leave the table. Think about all the things that kind of go wrong during homework time, and then sort of think about what is the positive opposite of that and put it in your list of rules. Okay. So now we're set up, right? We know what's for homework. We know where to do homework. Now we got to figure out when. So here's where you get to really introduce some time planning skills to your child and help practice them. So tip number one, try to figure out what the homework schedule should be to whatever extent you can every evening, okay? Develop a regular time for homework. It shouldn't be, fit in among all the other things that are going on, and now you say, okay, now sit down and do homework, because then again, you're going to have to struggle and negotiate each time that comes up. Instead, think about when does it make sense for you to do homework and have that be an expected routine, okay? So you may need to do that in a varied kind of way depending on what your child's schedule looks like. If they have different after-school activities, you should also think about what your child's needs are, right? Some kids do best when they come home, drop their bag, get a snack, start homework, get it done, and move on. Some kids really come home and they're kind of at max capacity. There's no way you're going to get them to sit down and do quality work. So those kids need to unwind. They need to watch a TV show. They need to run outside for a little while. They need to go jump on the trampoline. Think about that as well when you set up your homework schedule. What I've laid out here is what we call a personal calendar, and I've integrated a homework schedule into it, right? So why do we need all these calendars and tools? Again, you're trying to teach your child that if they use tools, things like checklists and calendars, that they're going to be more organized and prepared for life in general and for homework in particular. So this kind of a personal calendar you can easily create on the computer or, on paper and pencil. And basically what you're writing down is when do you get home every day and when do you go to bed, and then what comes in between, okay? So any special activities you have on a given day, and then figure out where can I fit in homework given this schedule, okay? So you'll see this kind of a template, and again, just as a sort of general reminder, any of these templates, if you think they're useful to you, feel free to email us and request a copy of these slides, and we can send them out so that you can use them to structure your own materials. So a personal schedule like this can help with trying to sort of set homework up as a regular routine so your kid knows what to expect. Okay, now beyond this, you want to add to it, right? Because there is going to be variation every day. And also, just because you say homework happens between 4 and 5 doesn't mean your child knows how to break down that time. That's a whole hour. A lot can happen in an hour, okay? So I want to also introduce this second tool, which is a daily time planning kind of conference, okay, that you do with your child. This preferably should happen in person. It shouldn't take more than 2 to 3 minutes once you get good at doing it. It could also happen on the phone or on FaceTime if you work outside of the home and need to check in with your child before homework time. But this time planning discussion should basically include these steps. So I'm going to tell you the steps, and then I'm going to kind of show you an example of how you would do this with your kid. So the steps are, A, review the list of assignments that have to be done that day. What's going on? What has to be handed in tomorrow? Okay. Then think about the long-term assignments that your child has to be working on as well. So they're keeping track of that in addition to their daily requirements. Next, you want to estimate how long each of those tasks should take. Discuss what else has to get done that day, right? Soccer, piano, whatever. And then you're going to make a schedule. Okay, you're going to break it down with the time. You're going to use the clock to stay on track. And I want you to keep in mind this motto, which you can feel free to steal and use with your kids. Get homework done so you can have fun, okay? Because really we want to front load homework time. We want to sort of set your kid up so that they understand if I get through this, because nobody wants to do homework, then I get to do the fun stuff, right? Putting it onto a schedule actually helps your child see that. Okay, that's one of the advantages of putting it down the schedule. The schedule also, of course, helps with accountability. So here's an example of a little afternoon schedule that I often will help kids do with their parents on a regular basis. So you'll see that in this one, I've broken down time into 15-minute increments, okay, starting at like the time the kid gets home and then going till bedtime. You can also use 30-minute increments if your child stays up later or has more assignments to do, so play around with that. But basically, this is an example of a kid's afternoon schedule. And here's how they arrived at this schedule. Question number 1, the mom asks, or the dad asks, or the babysitter asks, what do I have for homework tonight? Okay, well, tonight I have a math worksheet, history, reading, and response, and I have to do my reading and put it down in my log. Okay, so then next question, any assignments or tests coming up? Now, I don't want your child to do this from memory. When you're asking them these questions, they should have their planner in front of them. They should have the calendar in front of them that has the long-term assignments, because we don't trust our memories, even if we have the best memories in the world, okay? So now they say, yes, I have a vocabulary test coming up in 2 days. Okay, great. We should probably fit in some time to study for that. Okay, next question. What else is on my schedule? Well, I have piano for 45 minutes. And then also an important question, what do you want to do for fun? Because remember, you're trying to keep your kid in the mindset of, if I get my work done, I can have fun. Okay, and then when do I fit it all in? So based on the answers to those questions, which you can do really, really quickly, you fill in the afternoon schedule, right, with these little arrows blocking off periods of time so your child can visually see, oh, look, it's all going to get done, and here's how it's going to get done, and then check it out by, about 6:15, I should be done, and then look at all this time I have to just unwind, do what I want to do, right, get ready for bed. So try to see if you can experiment with fitting this in as a routine with your child. It will help them develop time planning skills. It will help them figure out how to break things down, and hopefully it will help to eliminate or at least lessen some of the conflict you have about what to do and when. Okay, it's kind of like a contract. And remember, you need to keep your child aware of the clock and the time. Okay, so make sure that clock is in that room, because otherwise how can they make sure they're staying on track? Okay. So now, tips for motivating performance, right? Because this cartoon, right, we can't get our kids to do their work by just repeatedly telling them to do it. So if your kids are struggling and if praise isn't enough, I want you to keep in mind our ABC model, okay, of social learning theory, which basically explains how does a behavior happen, okay? If we want to encourage a behavior to happen more frequently, in this case, getting homework done, right, we need to pay attention to what comes before it and what comes after it, the antecedents and the consequences, all right? We've talked a lot, actually. All of my helpful tips are examples of antecedents, helpful setting conditions, routines, homework location, rules, having clocks and calendars, time planning. All of those will hopefully set your child up for better success in terms of getting the behavior done or increasing the behavior. In addition, we may need to pay attention to consequences here, right? So we've already, again, laid out the idea of natural consequences in the sense of get your homework done and then there's all this fun stuff, right? But we should probably also think about praise and rewards. Let's talk about that for a moment. So positive attention and praise, catch your child being good. That's always step number one when we talk about reinforcement and consequences, okay? So what does that mean? It doesn't matter if your child, stomped their feet. Ignore that as they walk to the kitchen counter to do their homework. I don't care. I don't care if they said, I hate homework, homework is stupid. Ignore it. Don't engage. But the second they pick up that pencil and start working, say, I'm so happy you started your homework. Okay, pat them on the back, give them a kiss on the head. It doesn't even have to be verbal, but when you see them doing what they need to do, I want you to praise them, okay? Now, praise may not be enough. So if you need to, you can think about developing a formal points or reward system. And how do you do that? Basically, you're going to identify specific target behaviors related to homework, monitor daily performance with a chart, and then convert those points that they're going to get into rewards. So this is what a sample homework chart would look like. So for this child, there are 3 different specific concrete homework behaviors, okay? So don't put on there like, do a good job on your homework. You need to be clear and concrete and specific. And then they can accumulate points, right? And then those points can be traded in for rewards. And typically, the best kind of reward system is going to integrate daily and weekly rewards. Okay, things that they can get immediately. Usually those are privileges. You're not going to be buying them something every day, right? Privileges that they can get for getting their points, and then weekly rewards that maybe are a little bit bigger that they can use their points for as well. Okay, just a tip to keep in mind is to rotate these menu options because kids' interests can change and they can sort of lose interest as time goes on. So if your child is still struggling after you've sort of tried to use all of these strategies, you may want to think about seeking professional assistance. As I mentioned before, Organizational Skills Training, or OST, is a program that actually systematically goes through different areas of organization and helps kids get on track with a number of different areas related to getting schoolwork done. Parent management training and school consultation can also help if your child has, let's say, ADHD or is extremely oppositional and you need to figure out how to make a reward system work for them. So some resources, and again, we're happy to share these slides with these specific resources, or you can view this webinar later on and access this as well. You can always seek out our services here at the Manhattan office or in Westchester, where we provide home and school-based appointments. And there are also some resources here about organizational skills training, and there's a parent book that will be coming out in January, which has a lot of these helpful tips as well. Finally, public service announcement. You may be interested if you have a 3rd, 4th, or 5th grader who's having trouble staying organized. There is a research study that is recruiting participants right now where children will actually receive OST, organizational skills training, for free, and involves an evaluation as well. So you may want more information about that. Okay, so now I'm going to answer some questions. Okay, question 1. I think my child is lying about whether she has homework. How can I better approach her so she is truthful about assignments and ensure work gets done without hovering? Okay, that's a really, really good question. And again, it speaks to the kind of power struggle that I was talking about before that we really want to eliminate. We don't want it to be a fight. So in this kind of a situation, it's pretty common. I would loop in the school at this point, and I would loop in the teacher, and I would say, listen, I don't want to fight with my child every night, right? Homework is between you and them, but I need to make sure that it gets done. So try to see if the teacher can help in terms of monitoring whether the child is recording assignments appropriately in the planner. Again, you need a planner, right? The teacher could help in terms of checking that it's correct and initialing that the child has written down all the assignments, okay? Another way the teacher can help is by directing you towards, let's say, an online portal or something like that, or sending you a list of assignments, you know, him or herself, so that you can check that against your child's list. And again, you can integrate this kind of check of the assignments into the homework rules, right? Meaning you need to sit down at the beginning of homework time and let me check your assignment book, or let me log into the online portal, and we're going to look at this together. Otherwise, you know, you haven't satisfied the homework rules and you can't move on to all the fun stuff, right? So I think that those are some important strategies to keep in mind. Okay. Question 2, how bad is it if my child listens to music, and how can I determine whether music works? Really good question. So I would not say generally that it's bad if your child listens to music. In fact, I have one child who has to have her headphones on, otherwise she loses focus. So for some kids, music helps them. I would suggest setting up an experiment, okay? And we sometimes do this with kids in our office. Give them a sheet of math problems or something, okay? And have them put headphones on, listen to music, or turn music on, right? And time them to see how long it takes them to do those problems. And then give them an equivalent set of problems and have them, you know, do that set of problems without music and time them again. If there's no difference, then probably they're fine with music. If there is, and you could talk to them about this might be a distraction for you, okay? So a little experiment can sometimes help. Okay, question 3. My 8-year-old girl is coming off of her ADHD meds around homework time. She cannot adjust even though we have a schedule every day for homework. She loses interest, she rolls her eyes, she cries. She also has executive function and motor issues. Do you see a lot of homework struggle in kids with ADHD and delays? So the answer is yes. Children with ADHD, one of the key ways actually that we know that they qualify for a diagnosis of ADHD is typically when there is trouble around homework time. And so often just having the routine, right, you're probably doing all the right things. Just having the routine is sometimes not enough. And that would be one of those situations where I would say, do you need a little extra motivation, right, in order to have your child be motivated to get their homework done? And you may need to consider setting up a behavior management system with points and rewards to motivate them. Okay. Question 4. For teenagers who are by themselves after school, what are the best ways to get them focused on homework? So really important question. I've worked with lots of parents of teens who struggle with this, right? Because they may not be home. Their kid is perfectly fine being home alone, but how can you make sure that they're staying on track and getting their work done? So there are a couple of things that you may want to consider here. First of all, a check-in by phone sometimes is a good way to get things going. You may want to do a time planning conference with them by phone or email or FaceTime, okay, to get them rolling. You may also, since you're not there to control contingencies and rewards that they can access and privileges before homework is over, you may want to consider getting software involved in like being a little bit of a nanny for you. So thinking about software that can lock down certain apps on their computer until a certain time to make sure that they're getting their work done and not using distractions. Some parents I've worked with have also set up the Wi-Fi so that it doesn't work unless they activate it, and so you got to check that homework is done. So those might be some things you might want to consider. Okay. Question 5, how do I manage homework time with more than one child? So this is part of the juggling act of being a parent, right? It's not like you got one kid sitting in front of you that you're working with. So here I would think about the location question really carefully and think about the location where each of your kids should be working, right? So let's say you've got 2 kids, different grade levels, obviously, and you know that one of them needs your constant monitoring and the other one actually does better when they're off by themselves. So you might want to make sure that one of them is with you and the other one is in another room. Let's say they both need your monitoring. Then what do? So you could put them both at the same table, right, and sit with them for a prescribed period of time until they're done. You could also arrange things so that you have staggered homework times, right, where you work, with one of them and then switch to working with the other one, making sure that each of them are busy while the other is working. So it's a complicated one, but those are just some ideas. Okay, question 6. Reward system with points is too stressful for me to monitor with 3 kids. Is there a way to simplify it? So it is, it can be very difficult. Some tips that I've found work when you have multiple kids is, first of all, explaining to your kids that each of them is working on different things. Everybody's got different things to work on. And so one of them might be getting points for homework and one of them might be getting points for chores. Okay, so that's sort of thing number 1. Thing number 2 is make sure that the rewards that you're offering are easy to give, okay? Usually privileges can work if you can stagger the homework time so that it works, sort of in lockstep. You can allow them all to watch a TV show, let's say, at the end. If you can't do that, you may also want to think about really small motivators, sports cards or things like that, but it is a tough one. And unfortunately, we're almost out of time here, so the last question. My child rushes through his homework at school and it impacts quality. He puts up a fight when I suggest that he has to do it at home because he wants to be done home once he's back and decompress for the rest of the day. How do I persuade him to do part of it at home so that he has time for socializing at school? So it's a really good question. This is a situation where you might want to think about integrating sort of another place outside the home to do homework. Maybe they can, maybe you pick them up at school and they go to the school library and get work done so that when you come home, they're home. But you may need to just sort of address this through the motivational incentives we've talked about. So just time to close now on behalf of the Child Study Center. Thank you for joining me today. Once you leave the webinar, you'll receive a survey, and we'd appreciate if you would complete it. You'll also receive a follow-up email within a day or two with a link to a recording of today's presentation. We hope you can join us for our next webinar with What to Do When Your Child's Brain Gets Stuck, Strategies for Reducing Family Accommodation of ADHD by Rebecca Berry. That's on Tuesday, October 10th at 1 p.m. Thanks again, and bye.